Hi, welcome back to the Z-fari video novel. We're going to read the second part of the third chapter today, and I would like to warn you that there is a small section of it that is, let's say, inappropriate for children. The rest of it is plenty violent, and there are lots of zombies and stuff, but there's a little bit that you might want to steer the children away from. But if you're willing to give it a listen, please get comfortable, and we'll begin. And Bebe was alone. As the sound of Smith's motorcycle exhaust grew softer and softer, Bebe looked over his domain. He sat down in the camp chair under the umbrella and found that it swiveled. Smith had left a pair of binoculars on a small table to the left of the chair. Bebe picked them up and looked through, out toward the horizon. Wow, rangefinders! Bushnells with a matrix display. Bebe adjusted the focus and found that the rangefinder registered from 10 yards all the way to a mile. They were expensive and would prove to be invaluable for spotting the undead. Bebe made a note to try to buy a pair of Nikon 8x42s for himself just in case. Bebe walked over to the storage shed and looked inside. Smith and the other troopers on the platform had organized the ammo, weapons, and other supplies in a logical way. Nothing worth changing. No sense causing friction with his new co-workers. He scanned Z-land for about 15 minutes, and then he heard a car pulling up to the wall. It was Ned. In a little red convertible with a blonde riding shotgun. He turned off the car and got out. He was wearing cowboy boots, jeans, and a t-shirt that said "Roll Coal," and then the blonde got out of the car. She was about a foot taller than Ned and wore distressed leather cowgirl boots covered in intricate embroidery, almost illegally short Daisy Dukes, a bandeau seemingly made from a Confederate battle flag, and a straw cowboy hat. She ran over to the wall, following Ned up the stairs to the platform. "Hey, Bebe, how's your first day going? Seen any of the undies?" Ned hollered as he reached the top of the stairs. "Hi, Ned. Undies?" Bebe was almost afraid to ask. Ned laughed. "Undies, the undead." Bebe nodded. "Nope, not so far." "Bebe," Ned said, moving away from the stairs to give the blonde room. "Meet Lucky. Lucky, this is Smith's replacement, Bebe." Lucky smiled and nodded and held Bebe in her gaze like a python staring at its prey. Bebe thought for a split second that he'd be lucky to be squeezed by her. "Come on, Lucky," Ned said. "Let's get to the truck." Bebe was unsure of what to do, so he stood still. Ned saw the unease on Bebe's face and said, "We're just going to blow some smoke and throw some mud around. Don't worry, we'll be back in a little while." And he opened the hatch to the ladder and led Lucky down to the ground. Bebe walked to the sandbags in front of the platform and watched the two walk to the blasted tree, around the bushes, and disappear into what he now knew was the garage. A few minutes later, he heard the unmistakable roar of the diesel and puff of smoke from the truck's stacks as it shot out of the brush in front of the garage. Ned accelerated and the truck thundered off. 10 minutes passed and Bebe heard the rumble of the truck returning. Ned stopped the truck just before it was hidden by the bushes and hopped down from the cab. Ned made a motion like a man looking through binoculars, so Bebe lifted the Bushnells. He found Ned almost immediately. He saw him grinning and giving him a thumbs up. Ned walked to the rear of the pickup and leaned against the tailgate. Just as he was about to look away, Lucky walked into the field of view, tossing her hat onto the ground and reaching behind her to loosen the bandeau. Bebe's jaw dropped, and he, almost without thinking, zoomed in on Lucky's full, pale breasts and brown aureoles. Laughing, she brought her hands up underneath her breasts to support them and offer them to Ned. Ned held out his arms to her. Lucky walked to Ned's waiting arms, and she bent to kiss him. As they kissed, Ned reached for her left breast and caressed her there, moving his fingers to squeeze her nipple. Lucky broke their kiss, planted a sweet smooch on the tip of Ned's nose, and knelt in front of him. She sat back, resting her buttocks on her feet, and leaned forward a little so that she could unfasten Ned's belt. She unbuttoned his jeans and unzipped them, letting them fall to the ground around his boots. She slid Ned's white boxers over his hips and down to join his jeans. Ned might have been short of stature, but he was tall where it counted. Lucky reached out with her right hand, sliding underneath Ned's tumescent cock. She lowered her hand, and a string of spittle fell on the head of his penis. Lucky rubbed her saliva up and down the shaft and leaned forward a little more so that she could slide his dick between her breasts. She closed her eyes, and Bebe could see her mouth open in a moan of pleasure. Ned placed his hands on either side of her head, and Lucky bent down to take him into her mouth. She stuck her tongue out. her lips apart, and let the tip of her tongue trace the contours of his sex. She opened her mouth a little more and took him inside. Ned's cock was so thick that it filled her mouth. As she took him deeper and deeper into her, Ned's hands moved to the back of her head, fingers running through her hair. She let him leave her mouth, and a string of spittle hung between the head of Ned's cock and her lower lip. She said something and sucked him into her mouth again. Ned was leaning back against the tailgate of the truck, eyes closed, lost in the pleasure of the moment. Suddenly, the back of a head moved between Ned and Bebe's view with the binoculars. Just as abruptly, Ned's throat exploded in a burst of blood and his body dropped to the ground. Lucky was concentrating on Ned's penis, and as his weight shifted, she opened her eyes to a shower of blood. She screamed and dropped his penis. She screamed again as a second zombie bit into her shoulder. A third zombie pulled her hair to drag her away. The zombie who had his teeth in her shoulder let its bite go and reached for the third zombie. The two zombies clawed and bit each other, and Lucky staggered away toward the garage. The first zombie that had killed Ned bent over Ned's body, its mouth just above Ned's. It was as if it were waiting for something. It wasn't chewing on Ned. It wasn't tearing open Ned's skull in search for brains. It was waiting for something. The two zombies that were fighting had forgotten Lucky. She somehow had the presence of mind to totter around the bushes toward the dead tree and then toward the wall. She saw Bebe on the wall and screamed again. And the two zombies that were fighting forgot about their squabble and went for her again. The taller of the two reached her first and knocked her to the ground. Lucky reached out to push her away, and the zombie bit into her wrist, taking her hand completely off. As arterial blood rushed out of her, Lucky slumped, unable to move again. The zombie who took Lucky's hand off moved to it so its mouth was just above hers, and it waited. The third zombie had disappeared. Bebe was stunned. It took him a moment to move to his rifle. Another moment to cock it and sight at the zombie hovering over Lucky. He pulled the trigger and missed the zombie by 10 feet. He inhaled and then exhaled. He remembered Papa's drill. It took so long, but Bebe needed the ritual. If he was going to hit anything, he had to repeat what he had practiced 1,000 times. He finally was able to pull the trigger and missed. A little cloud of dust rose up near the second zombie's head. The zombie that had been hovering over Lucky waited no longer. It stood stiffly and careened off back into the bush that was seemingly everywhere now. Bebe moved the scope until he found the truck. He moved the scope until the field of view took in where Ned had fallen. The zombie was gone, and Ned's body had disappeared. Bebe moved the scope back to find Lucky's body. At the edge of the bushes, by the blasted tree, as she moved closer to the wall, she was gone. Ned was gone. There had been 3 zombies easily within range, and Bebe had missed them all. Bebe was in trouble.